Belshazzar, he gave a great banquet. It was a party. It was a festival, right? He gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles, and he drank wine with them. While Belshazzar was drinking wine, he gave orders to bring the gold and silver goblets that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem. And so the king and his nobles, his wives, his concubines might drink from them. Excuse me. So they brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wives, his concubines, they drank from them. They drank the wine. They praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze and iron and wood and stone. Suddenly, the fingers of a human hand appeared, and it wrote on the plaster of the wall near the lampstand in the royal palace. And the king watched the hand as it wrote, and his face turned pale. He was so frightened that his legs became weak, and his knees were knocking. The king summoned the enchanters, the astrologers, the diviners. He said to these wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Now, why the third? Why the third? Well, because Nabanakhan's on top. He's second. Right? So they have to come under him. They'll become the third highest ruler in town. Then all the king's wise men came in, but they couldn't read the writing or tell the king what it meant. So King Belshazzar became even more terrified. His face grew more pale. His nobles were baffled. The queen, hearing the voices of the king and his nobles, she came into the banquet hall. "My king, live forever," she said. "Don't be alarmed. Don't look so pale. There's a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father, he was found to have insight and intelligence, wisdom like that of the gods. And your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief of the magicians, enchanters, astrologers." And the king said to him, "Are you Daniel, one of the exiles my father, the king, brought from Judah? I've heard that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that you have insight, intelligence, and outstanding wisdom." The wise men and the enchanters, they were brought before me to read this writing and tell me what it meant, but they could not explain it. Now, I've heard that you're able to give interpretations, to solve difficult problems. If you can read this writing and tell me what it means, you'll be clothed in purple, have a gold chain placed around your neck. You'll be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom. And then Daniel answered the king. "You can keep your gifts for yourself. Give your rewards to somebody else. Nevertheless, I'll read the writing for the king. I'll tell you what it means. You see, your majesty, the Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar sovereignty and greatness, glory, splendor. Because of his high position, he gave him all the nations and peoples. Every language dreaded and feared him. Those the king wanted to put to death, he put to death. Those he wanted to spare, he spared. Those he wanted to promote, he promoted. Those he wanted to humble, he humbled. But when his heart became arrogant, hardened with pride, he was deposed from his royal throne. He was stripped of that glory. He was driven away from people. He was given the mind of an animal. He lived with wild donkeys. He ate grass like an ox. His body was drenched with dew in the heaven until he acknowledged that the Most High God is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and sets over them anyone he wishes. But you, Belshazzar. You see, your father, he was given all this glory, and when for a minute he thought it was about him, he got put in his place by God Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, until the point that he came around and realized, okay, none of this is because of me. But you, Belshazzar, his son, you haven't humbled yourself, though you knew all of this. Instead, you have set up yourself against the Lord of heaven. You had the goblet from his temple brought to you, and to your nobles, your wives, your concubines drank wine from them. You praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life. Earl with the soundtrack. I love it. He holds in his hand your life and all your ways. Therefore, he sent that hand that wrote the inscription. This is the inscription that was written, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Now those words, Mene, means numbers, or numbered. Tekel means weighed. Parsin means divided. So it says, numbered, numbered, weighed, divided. Daniel says, here is what the words mean. Mene, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Now mind you, while this is happening, the Euphrates is dropping. And the Persians are sneaking under the wall. While they're having this conversation, the Persian army is creeping into the city, taking up their positions. And nobody even knows it yet. Your days have been numbered. Your reign is brought to an end. You've been weighed on the scales, and you've been found wanting. You are not good enough, sir. Perez, your kingdom is divided, and it's given to the Medes, the Persians. Then at Belshazzar's command, Daniel was clothed in purple. A gold chain was placed around his neck. He was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain. And Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. The royal one of the Medes took over the kingdom at the age of 62. Now that little cylinder we have tells us that it happened on this very night, in one night, while everybody's having a party. Babylon falls in an instant, and Belshazzar is killed. Isn't that fascinating? We know from his tomb that when he died, very mysteriously, Cyrus was 71 years old. He ruled Babylon for 9 years. Guess how old he would have been when he took Babylon? And when they want to do the math? 62 years old. Isn't it just incredible how consistently right this book is? It's just right. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of work to figure it out. I had the Darius issue. Like Darius the Mede. Darius doesn't come around for another 10 years. Like, I don't understand. Daniel talks about when Darius the Persian ascends the throne. So what is he talking about? Darius the Mede took over the city tonight. Well, Darius the Mede and Darius the Persian are two different kings. The royal one of the Medes was Cyrus. Why do they call him the Mede? Well, because he took over the Median kingdom first. He was the king of Media when he overthrew his grandpa. Then he took Persia years later. So he had been the king of the Medes for a long time. 30 plus years. I think it's a fun story. But what's the point? Let's look at these. I got some verses here for you from the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah writes this 50 years or so. Well, more than that. More like the news is passed from one runner to the next as the messengers hurry to tell the king that his city has been captured. All the escape routes are blocked. The marshes have been set aflame. The army is in panic. Y'all, Herodotus describes this almost word for word. What Jeremiah says is going to happen to this city is exactly what we see happen to this city. I mean, exactly. By the time the warriors even realize they're taken, they're already taken. They can't fight, they can't run, they can't escape. Everything around the city is on fire. Like, in Babylon, you had the city proper, and then all around it, you had these little villages that were kind of part of Babylon where the poorer people lived. They just burned everything. There's no escape. And in a night, Babylon falls. To who? To the very king that God said, by name, would set these people free. There are a couple things that I want us to get to hold on to from this story this morning. Same as we've talked about in weeks previous. This book is trustworthy. It's trustworthy. It has been proven time and time and time again to be good, accurate history. Now, even if you don't want to include God in the midst of the story, even if you remove God, the history is reliable. Over and over again, it proves to tell the truth. That's the first and most obvious thing. The second thing I want us to get is that when God says He's going to do something, that's what He does. When God says, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I am going to do it, count on it. He'll move heaven and earth, life on it.